Hey nerds, and welcome back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies. So the show is finally back after its brief hiatus, starting with episode 16 titled What If? Now this is just a nice throwback to the comic series What If, where the Watcher would introduce kind of alternate realities of familiar characters in different positions. Essentially, what if a decision or an event had gone one way or another. So that's where the title comes from. This was a very promising episode. Some really cool stuff happened. I do have some complaints that who knows how this framework stuff's going to play out. Maybe it'll be addressed, but we're going to get to all that in a little bit. But first, the two things to talk about: the Cambridge Bahrain incident with May, and how that affects the greater timeline of this framework universe. So, what do we know? The Bahrain incident was when May got her name, her nickname, the Cavalry. And this is when, in the flashback, we learned that she actually had to kill that little girl. Well, from what we understand, because it was May's greatest regret, in this universe, she didn't kill the girl. She was brought back to the US, and something happened in Cambridge, and there was massive death. Hundreds of people died. I think this is a reference, so this is the framework version of the Stanford incident. This is the incident that set off the first Civil War in the comics. The explosion that killed hundreds of kids because of the incident revolving around the New Warriors. This time, the incident is being used to essentially register all Inhumans as opposed to registering all superheroes. So that's kind of where this is happening. That's what that was, and that's what allowed Hydra to come out of hiding. So Hydra came out of hiding saying, "Look, for the safety of everyone, we need to deal with this." Now, the timeline of when this happens from what we know from past episodes from when this incident occurred. This was before Iron Man 1. So everything that's happened in the MCU since that is different. What does that mean? Well, is Tony Stark still selling weapons? Did he ever become Iron Man? Was Captain America ever found? Is the Arnim Zola computer still functioning? Is that still a part of what is now Hydra? What about Thor and Asgard and the Chitauri invasion? These are things that we don't know what's going on. Is there a giant fleet of helicarriers? The Triskelion, which it's the exact version that we saw in Captain America Winter Soldier, it's still there. So it's all of these events. I don't think we're going to get answers on a lot of them, but I think we will get some answers. Now, it's possible the answer we're going to get for the Chitauri invasion is New York's gone. New York hasn't been referenced. We don't know anything about that. It's possible that New York was nuked, like the original plan that the World Security Council had. But again, we don't know, and it's very likely we're not going to get answers to a lot of those questions. But that's kind of what's going on there, and this is why we have May, who her greatest regret turned into an even larger one, I think, and that's what's going to let her remember who she was and come back. So, next. Coulson as a teacher and everything that happens with him and that classroom. First, the student Chris Adler. There's no character in the comics that I could find named Chris Adler. There's an Irene Adler, different from the Sherlock Holmes Irene Adler, but Irene Adler was a mutant, so it's probably not her. She was a kind of a psychic. She could kind of see the future. She went by the name Destiny and was a longtime friend and partner and was in a relationship with Mystique. Don't think it's her. Again, I didn't find anyone from the comics that fits that name. So I've decided that this Chris Adler is a reference to the drummer Chris Adler, who played on the 15th Megadeth album called Dystopia. Honestly, I have no idea. I think it's just a character. They named him Chris Adler. No reference to anything. It's just they searched him up and realized he wasn't anyone. Because that's probably something they have to do. We're going to name the character this. Does that name already exist in the comics? And if so, do we need to change it, or does it fit with what we're doing? It's a reference to the Megadeth drummer from the Dystopian album. Probably not, but that's a fun thing that I think they should go with. But Coulson, He completely rejects Gemma, and then we see him actually start to remember Daisy. But that folder he has, it's got references to all the kind of really big important things in his life. We see a reference to his one-time girlfriend and love interest, the cello player. We see Lola, we see Tahiti, and then we see all of that. Tahiti is a magical place. There's probably more stuff hidden in there if I went back and tried to screen capture some of that stuff, but Coulson clearly is having his memories bleed through, and I think Gemma is right that the programming he had with Tahiti, where he's already had his memories erased and overwritten, I think that's actually making him more susceptible to seeing through the framework than other people. But it could also just be he's got more of an emotional connection to Daisy, and that's why Daisy was able to kind of break through where Gemma couldn't. Coulson, I bet we will see back in action, or at least regaining his memories more completely in the next episode. But next, the Doctor. We learn that the Doctor in this episode is Fitz, and that makes sense. He's clearly in a relationship with Madame Hydra. We'll get to her in a minute. In the teaser that we got before the hiatus, he's helping someone out of a car. That was most likely Ada as Madame Hydra. But I gotta say, I'm actually a little disappointed that it is Fitz and not one of the other notable doctors or psychopaths from Hydra. Why not Arnim Zola or his robot body? Or why not a version of Dr. Faustus, who we saw in Peggy Carter? He could be there, he could be old. Why not Daniel Whitehall, who we know was a scientist? There's a lot of possibilities that it could be here, but I understand why they did it. They wanted all of the people that were important to the show to be in these key roles, or at least to fill key roles. Coulson is definitely not in a key role, but he's in a role that would make him happy. Fitz is all about science, so it would make him happy. And it makes sense why Ada would put him there, because she really did have a strong connection with Fitz. And as far as she knows, she may have actually loved him, and that's why she created that. But I am a little disappointed that it wasn't something else. You do get the impression that maybe some of Arnim Zola's more modern aspects were kind of reflected in Fitz, kind of his experimentation on Inhumans and things like that. But it would have been nice. I mean, I feel like this whole framework series of episodes was a great opportunity to bring in characters that would not have normally fit in the show. But we will see if that still happens. Could be, could just be they're keeping it tight in order to just not have to worry about introducing these characters and who they are. We will see. Next, Ada as Madame Hydra. Now, Madame Hydra has been many different people. There's been at least 6 different people to have that title. Viper was one of them. She's probably one of the most notable. The other kind of most famous, I would say, is the Contessa de Allegra. Allegra de Fontaine, sorry. She was notable as being essentially a triple agent between S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, and Leviathan. So it's, there's a lot of possibility for who Ada's character could be reflecting, although she's mostly just there probably as a kind of a guardian and watching over the entire framework. Now, there's a new Madame Hydra, and by I say new, this is in reference to what's going on with the Captain America comic right now, with the whole stuff that's leading up to the Secret Empire. There's a character named Eliza in this series, and it turns out that she believes that the Madame Hydra kind of title has always been hers, and it's just kind of jumped around to imposters. Her character, though, is a bit confusing because she's some sort of cosmic level being, which seems really strange, who's as old as time itself, it seems like. She's as old as some of these kind of elder gods, such as Kython and the Demiurge. Apparently Kython actually proposed to her, so that kind of shows you where on power level and age she would sit. We don't know too much from her outside of that, but that kind of all-powerful being within the universe, you do kind of see some of that with Ada, where she does control this entire reality. So it's possible they decided to pull some of that, but that's so new, it's probably a little far-fetched. But what do you guys think? The last thing, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about, some missed opportunities. And I've been talking about how they could have brought in a lot of characters from the comics, you know, specifically from fan theories about who we thought characters were. This would have been a great time to introduce characters. This is only the first episode of the framework stuff, so there's still time. But on top of that, this would have been a great opportunity to bring back characters. Trip. I've already talked about Arnim Zola and how his computer mainframe could still be there. It could have gotten an upgrade. Daniel Whitehall, Gideon Malik, Calvin Zabo, and Victoria Hand. These are all, I mean, Sitwell also. These are all characters that should show up here in one form or another. And like I said, this is only the first episode of a kind of a series of things that are happening inside the framework. So it'll be really interesting to see if they do that, because a lot of these characters people either loved and it like really hurt to see them go, or they just were underused. And this gives an opportunity to really kind of explore that and bring those characters back. So let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for how this is going? Do you like these kind of episodes, or do they frustrate you because it's just so much of just like reminiscing about past stuff, like trying to get Coulson to remember, then they're gonna have to try and get May to remember, and then Fitz, and you know, a little, you know, some of it can be pretty heartbreaking stuff. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out the website and follow my podcast. Every week I'm giving you the latest news from the nerd community, the good, the bad, and the toss-up. So leave a comment, check all that stuff out, and follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Good Nerd Bad Nerd. So until next week, guys, I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd, and this has been Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies.